points or percentages. So India was one of the highest in the world. They had won 175%, and higher than that. Negotiating right now, and it's also BRICS. You know, they have BRICS, which is basically a group of countries that are anti the United States, and India is a member of that, if you can believe it. And it's an attack on the dollar, and we're not going to let anybody attack the dollar. So it's partially BRICS, and it's partially the trade situation. It's the deficit. We had a tremendous deficit. So, as you know, Prime Minister Modi is a friend of mine, but they don't do very much business in terms of business with us. They sell a lot to us, but we don't buy from them. You know why? Because the tariff is so high. They have one of the highest tariffs in the world. Now they're willing to cut it very substantially, but we'll see what happens. We're talking to India now. We'll see what happens. It doesn't matter too much whether we have a deal or whether we charge them a certain tariff. But you'll know at the end of this week.
भारत और अमेरिका ने मार्च 2025 में एक न्यायपूर्ण, संतुलित और पारस्परिक रूप से लाभकारी द्विपक्षीय व्यापार समझौते BTA के लिए बातचीत शुरू की, जिसका लक्ष्य 2025 के फॉल यानी अक्टूबर-नवंबर 2025 तक समझौते के पहले चरण को पूरा करना था। सरकार हमारे किसानों, श्रमिकों, एंटरप्रेन्योर्स, उद्यमी, निर्यातकों, सूक्ष्म, लघु और मध्यम उद्योगों और उद्योग जगत के सभी हितधारकों के कल्याण की रक्षा और संवर्धन को सर्वोच्च महत्व देती है। हम अपने राष्ट्रीय हितों को सुरक्षित करने और आगे बढ़ाने के लिए सभी आवश्यक कदम उठाएंगे।
I'm joined by Professor Scott Lucas, Professor International Politics, Clinton Institute, University of College of Dublin, Ambassador Veena Sikri, journalist Ajit Kumar Jha, and the issue is very, very simple. It's Donald Trump, his unpredictability, announcement of tariff and his sudden fixation on Russia. Professor Lucas, my question to you is that suddenly if you look at the tweets of Donald Trump, it's all boiling down to Russia, Russia's oil. Why?
Well, let me say, first of all, that Donald Trump is not coherent and he's not literate economically or politically. There are a couple of issues here that should be approached logically. One is the question of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and how you limit that invasion. And that brings into play the Trump administration's threat of 100% tariffs on countries that deal with Russia. Now, that's certainly an important issue to be raised with India, which has purchased a lot of Russian oil, but it should be done in a respectful fashion. Secondly, Donald Trump's economic statements regarding India, frankly, are nonsense. It is true that India has had a relatively high tariff on U.S. products compared to the rest of the world, an average tariff of around about 11% last year. However, Trump's approach to the tariffs shows no knowledge of how to deal with tariffs, whether you talk about India, Japan, South Korea, the European Union, Canada, or Mexico. Trump's approach to tariffs is a personal, bullying, extortionate approach, and he has just chosen to make India, for some unexplained reason beyond the Russia issue, there's something beyond this, for some reason he's decided to make India a whipping boy.
Ambassador Sikri, is there an issue beyond which is not in public domain?
Well, I think, first of all, there is the element of President Trump's total unpredictability. And as the previous panelist said correctly, this is one of the issues that have just come up like that. We have been negotiating with the government of the USA, and as President Trump himself indicated, the negotiations are still on. But the statement by our Minister Piyush Goyal was very clear that India is going to protect the interests of its farmers, its entrepreneurs, and the micro, small, and medium enterprises. So we are not going to give in on India's interests, But our reaction has been very calm, very collected, very cautious. We are prepared to continue the negotiations, and if the tariffs come, we will certainly look at it, because it is a matter of great surprise when you talk of purchase of Russian oil. The European Union is buying huge amounts of Russian oil, and of course even more through India, because India is importing the crude, and then the refined product is going to the European Union. We know that it's very large. We know that America is also continuing to do business with Russia in purchases of uranium and certain other products. In fact, President Trump was very confident during his campaigning that he would end the Ukraine-Russia conflict within 24 hours. Of course, it hasn't happened, even though so many months have passed. And now he's, putting pressure on Russia as well, saying he's giving 50 days and then 10 days and so on and so forth. So I think we have to just take it in its stride. We have to be very clear about our own interests.
There is one thing which I would like to bring to your notice is that Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, in an interview to a leading channel in the United States of America said, India is not a great global actor, and the President's team and the trade team is frustrated with the Indian delegation. I mean to say, these are not random statements emanating from United States of America. There is a sense of coherence.
No, let me say that quite clearly, that when President Trump says that India is a dead economy, doesn't he know that India is now soon going to be the third largest economy in the world? How do you compare that statement with India being a dead economy? There is no correlation between these two statements. And when Mr. Bessent says about the India is not a big player, that could be their view. It doesn't mean that the rest of the world agrees with that view. I'm just saying that if President Trump is trying to put pressure, whether by talking about Pakistan, by saying that Pakistan will sell oil to India, we also have our own reserves in the region of the Andaman Islands, and I'm sure that we have equal capacity to develop those. So that's not the point. The point is that we are prepared to do negotiations, but we are prepared that if the negotiations don't succeed, we will deal with the situation.
Okay.
We have a question about the amount that is. India is not a high exporting country. Exports account for only 2.2% of India's GDP. So we know how to deal with the situation, and Indian interests are paramount. Despite that, we've been very collected and cautious and calm about the response, and we will continue the negotiations.
Okay. Ajit, your opinion on President Trump using Pakistan as a leverage? I think it's after decades any American president has done something like this.
True. President Trump is a dealer, right? He's more a dealer than a leader. He's been, he's worked in the reality sector for a long time. So he actually is, he's almost as if he's shuffling cards, right? He'll throw one card at a time. First, he'll throw Russian oil. If that doesn't work, then he'll say, oh, but India is also a member of the BRICS. And BRICS are hurting, the dollar. There's an onslaught against the dollar. So therefore, I'll punish India. And then he'll move to Pakistan. And then he'll claim that, after all, I was instrumental in ending the war between India and Pakistan. So he sort of basically is going to negotiate. In fact, the latest I picked up was that he's still open to negotiations on the 25% tariffs, but he wants India to slash its very high tariff rates that it has had in the past, which is true. Indian tariffs in certain sectors is extraordinarily high. So he's going to pressurize that. But at the same time, it's going to affect quite a lot of our sectors, gems and jewelry, automobile, auto components, textiles and apparels, chemicals, and specialty chemicals, for example. Steel and aluminium faces 25%, seafood, dairy, even agriculture is certain. For example, Amul and others, if there is a negotiation, it's going to be devastated. So we actually face a serious threat. The point is that, remember, in geopolitical terms, we are very close to the US, right? In fact, throughout the last 11 years, we moved in that direction, more closer to the US. We are members of the Quad, the anti-China front. In fact, people have sometimes been very critical of the Quad, calling it Asia's NATO, and we are a member of that. So the point is, can we use that to leverage and negotiate with President Trump? I think we should attempt to do that. And remember one thing, President Trump has been politically rather successful. Almost all the world major powers have fallen at his feet. China is facing 30%, even more than us.
You know,
Canada, Mexico, Brazil.
Ajit, there's a Reuters report. The government has not reacted on it, but the Reuters have, put it out saying that the Indian state refiners have stopped buying Russian oil in the past week as the discount narrowed this month. Now, we'll wait for the government to officially respond to it. They have listed 4 companies, but let me go across to Professor Lucas. Will this decision impact Indian economy?
Oh, it's going to impact the economy, but the first economy it affects is the U.S. economy. I mean, let me give a fundamental about tariffs. The first people who are hurt by tariffs are American importers, American consumers, American manufacturers. Those people that take components from India, take products from India. Now, it is true that Indian exporters could then take what we might call a second order hit, because their demand for their products is reduced, so they may have to think about cutting their prices. But it is primarily Americans who are punished by this. Now, Donald Trump does not understand this. He thinks tariffs replace taxes. So what is happening, and here I slightly disagree with my learned colleague, Mr. Jha. I think he's right, but these are not victories for Trump. I think when you look at the European Union, when you look at South Korea, when you look at the UK, who have not made deals, these are not full deals, these are frameworks with America. They're playing for time. They're waiting for that effect to hit Americans. And then beyond that, there are certain countries who are telling Trump this. You will hurt Americans. And Canada, which is also threatened this week with a 35% tariff, it is not giving way to Trump, precisely because it's saying, look, if you want to punish us, you'll hurt Americans. And meanwhile, this is my key point, other countries will start working with each other and bypassing America. What was the biggest news for me last week that's been overshadowed by this? The UK-India trade agreement.
But you're basically saying that the tariff will not serve the purpose of profit for the United States Treasury.
No, what happens here is that the tariffs are collected by the U.S. government, but in effect, that is an additional tax on American consumers, American manufacturers, American farmers. What it then does is it drives up inflation because the prices of goods are higher. When inflation goes up, it makes it more difficult to reduce interest rates. And if it is more difficult to reduce interest rates, the U.S. pays a higher interest on its $36 trillion government debt. In other words, this is a cycle of effects that will damage the U.S. economy. The question is, how soon will Trump see that damage and possibly have to back off because of it?
Okay, 2 quick questions. One quick question from Ambassador Sikri. Madam, I'm falling short of time. And one to Mr. Jha. I asked this question to you yesterday also. Are we going to witness a restrained response from India, or do you think that there will be some action?
I think India, as I said again, there will not be any immediate action. The negotiations will continue. I agree with Professor Scott Lucas that the impact is going to be on the American economy. The iPhones made in India, which are going to USA, if there's a tariff on them, will the American consumer be ready to pay more? It's they who have to decide whether they want to pay more or whether they're not going to buy the iPhone which is going from India. If you want to manufacture iPhones in America, it's going to take a very long time. So I think that this is a negotiation tactic. It is a very strong pressure tactic. I think the Indian response by the government and by the minister is very clear. We are going to face this. We're going to talk about it. We're going to negotiate about it. But we're not going to give in on essential points like import of dairy, the question about the Indian products being faced with milk and other dairy products which have cows fed with non-vegetarian products, including beef. They're not going to be acceptable to India. The GMO products are not going to be acceptable to India. So India is not going to give in on those. Negotiations will continue.
Okay, Mr. Jha, very quickly, you have reported both from the East and the West Coast of the United States of America. 30 seconds to you. Why does this remain so popular despite, as Professor Lucas said, he does not understand economy?
Look, in the short term, I agree with Professor Lucas and Ambassador Sikri that in the short term, US consumers will be affected, inflation will be high, but it usually takes 6 to 18 months to figure out the effect of tariff on the economy. Long term, at least President Trump feels that it will revive domestic manufacturing in the US. Now, we are going to see that. I think the important point will be the Senate elections next year. If Trump starts losing there, then we'll realize that he's being hit by these various measures of tariffs.
Thank you. Thank you all of you. This is all I had on Point today. Thank you all my guests for joining me on this show. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Good night.
एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर एंकर टूथपेस्ट, नए जमाने की नई सुरक्षा।
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कर आता है आगे।